A new day is upon us, and how lucky we are to be alive and able to participate in the future. You know, time marches on. Every new day, every new hour, every new minute, every new second is a step forward into the future. The whole world is on an endless forward march, but individually, not all of us are moving forward. Some of us find it hard to let go of the past, and I really understand this difficulty. You know, moving on can be the most arduous task a human can face. When bad things happen in a person's life, it can change everything. It's like being on a journey to an unknown destination, traveling along an unfamiliar route, just, following directions. And then suddenly you come across a roadblock which your directions did not warn you about. It changes your journey. You think about having to go back the way you came to find another route. What a hassle. The first route you try may not get you back, neither the second nor the third. At this point, continuing your journey starts to look less and less like a good idea. So you turn around and go home, choosing to let the obstacle defeat you rather than find a way past it. This happens to all of us at one point or the other. Bad things happen and we lose the will to move forward. Your business fails and the last thing you want to do is start another business. You study for ages and fail your exam, and the very idea of going through all of that again with no guarantee of success just sucks the vim out of you. You trust somebody with all your heart and they let you down, making the idea of trusting anyone, much less the same person again, seem rather futile. Yeah, when bad things happen, moving forward can be the hardest thing to do. But maybe we are looking at it from the wrong direction, from the wrong perspective. Maybe the reason why we find it hard to move on is because we think we have a choice in the matter. My dear friend, time marches on. Every new second, every new minute, every new hour, every new day, time marches on, whether you march with it or not. And in order for a new day to come, an old one must pass. In order for joy to come in the morning, the pain of the night must pass. The two cannot exist at the same time in your life, just as the sun and the moon are not usually seen in the sky at the same time. One must go for the other to come. When your business goes bankrupt, you feel like a failure, right? It becomes hard to see that success is actually waiting on the other side of your obstacle. When you fail your exams and you find yourself back at square one, the last thing you feel like doing is making the whole journey again and finding your way around whichever obstacle made you fail. But you see, you don't really have a choice in the matter. Time marches on, and you either march with it or you get left behind. You may be forced to start again, but at least that returns you to your forward journey. And forward is the only option available to us. When somebody breaks your heart and the journey no longer seems worth it, well, try not to forget that pain must go for joy to come. Happiness is guaranteed only if you muster the strength to resume your journey. Sometimes it may mean giving somebody new the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes it may mean giving someone old a second chance. Either way, your only choice is to resume your journey and keep moving forward, leaving pain in your rearview mirror and heading towards the joy that comes in the morning. My dear friend, if you have been through hard times and your future seems full of obstacles, making you want to give up and go home, please remember that you don't really have a choice in the matter. Time marches on, and you have no choice but to march on with it. If your route is blocked, you can't go back. Try every route until you find the one that helps you resume your forward journey. My name is Kojo Yankson, and the future is bright, so I'm marching towards it, side by side with you. Good morning, Ghana.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM News here on the AM Show with me, Mapita CBD. Now, President Akufo-Addo is promising to tackle the deplorable road network in parts of the Upper West region. The Parliament's chief of Palma and the Gandawi traditional area in the Sisali West district of the Upper West region, Kuro Osman Dewia Nakpa, called on him with demands ranging from roads, schools to other concerns. The president admitted it would be unrealistic to meet the demands looking at the time left for the December 7 general elections. He, however, assured that his second term will witness improvement in the road network.
These are the matters you have put on the table are all very, very genuine and important issues. The road network, quite a lot of the networks in the Upper West are being done, but still we cannot do all of them at once. But some have begun, and others, God willing, in the next term will also be addressed. We only have 3 more weeks to go to the elections. You shouldn't expect too much between now and then, but understand that fully, that those roads that still have to be done, the Wa Hain Tumu Road and the Tumu Gulu trunk roads, are roads that are very much on the drawing board, and we should see some definite results about them.
Now, the Ghana Education Service will, from January next year, introduce a new academic calendar that will run all year. The new calendar is expected to help the schools catch up, having lost most of the academic year to the coronavirus pandemic, while still having to accommodate the demands of the new year. Director General of the Ghana Education Service, Professor Kwesi Opoku Amankwa, who made this known to the Conference of Directors of Education in Cape Coast, urged parents and other stakeholders to cooperate for successful implementation of the revised academic year. Richard Kojanyako has more.
The Conference of Directors of Education have been looking back at the effect of the pandemic on education delivery and what can be done to ensure that when schools reopen, academic activities would be done without hitches. Director General of the Ghana Education Service, Professor Kwesi Opoku Amankwa, who opened the conference, applauded the directors for their support during the difficult periods of the pandemic. He revealed schools would be opened in January, and when they do, the academic calendar would not be the same again.
Come January next year, schools will be reopening for a new academic year. This has been so because of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. As we reopen this new school calendar year, which is virtually new to all of us, we'll be running a calendar that, in a sense, will try to mop up and finish up with the semester or term that was not covered, and at the same time catch up with the year. We'll be running a calendar that will run all year round from January to December to ensure that we catch up. And this calendar may be running for more than a year to ensure that we catch up before we possibly return to our old system.
President of the Conference of Directors of Education, Peter Blake Akakwesin, appreciated government efforts of infrastructural support in the schools. He, however, appealed to government to help place directors of education properly on the correct salary structure to enable them enjoy allowances as their colleague directors in the country.
Nana, you will be surprised to hear today that substantive metro, municipal and district directors of education, who are also appointed on the approval of the president, just as directors in other sectors, have been denied of almost all the prerequisites attached reform in the economy of Ghana. This sharply defeats the underlying principle of equal pay for equal work, which the Senate-sponsored salary regime sought to achieve.
Oh, hello there. Good morning, all of you. If you're just joining us, of course, you're watching Joy News. This is the AM show. We've done the news. Mapito CBD brought us the AM news. Time for us now to look at what's making headlines in the newspapers. Hello there, Ben.
Hi, Mama V.
Yep.
Here's another morning, and it's a very healthy Thursday, but a lot of matters to look at.
Absolutely.
And, so I have the Ghanaian Times newspaper, the Daily Guide, Business Finder, the Ghanaian Publisher, and I think I shall do maybe the Catalyst in addition. So those are the papers I'm going to be doing.
Okay, so let me just start. I've got the Daily Graphic, the Daily Dispatch, the Daily Statesman, and the Accra. How do you call this one?
The Accra Times.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The former president's picture's there, so
It's
and I'm
blocked
not sure I've seen
everything.
the Accra Times before. This is the first time maybe for me. All right, let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. Front page of the Graphic today, of course, it's reminding us that COVID-19 is real. Wear your mask. But there's a very disturbing story that captures the front page of the paper. Death traps uncovered underground chambers pose danger. And you'd find shortly on your screen when you take a look at what's on the front page. Students of the police depot JHS walking close by an open underground chamber at Aveno. It's actually telling you something that's very common you'd find. And sometimes I wonder, especially when we're on our phones a lot of times these days, you just be walking and before you know, you and your phone or... yeah. But it says on the cover, telecommunication chambers in parts of Accra have exposed members of the public, particularly pedestrians, to danger. The underground cable access chambers have wide openings and are mostly found in the middle of pedestrian walkways, compromising the safety of the public. Usually you find that there's a complete road done, and then they'll just come and take some of the coverings off and lay their cables and leave it like that, exposing everything in the gutter and also putting the lives of people in danger. So very important that the paper is highlighting on this issue. And then there's a special supplement on Ghana Stock Exchange at 30 in the inside pages. Government votes $60 million for Skills Development Fund. Good determiner of election winner Asantehene. God determiner of election winner Asantehene tells candidates. Graphic holds town hall meeting in Tamale today. If you look at page 24, it says failure by COVID-19 testing labs to provide information worrying. That's according to the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaji. And then presidents inaugurate a 13-member peace council, urge members to sustain peace. More people investing in stocks, according to the Ghana Stock Exchange. On the back page, can SARS survive Sudan threats as Akuno faces first test? The earlier one, the very early one that broke our hearts, it was just a friend deal. Right now we're getting into
between
some
us
real
and Mali.
action. Yes.
And then I believe Qatar.
Yes.
And we did much better against Qatar. I think
Exactly.
we thumped them by 5 goals too. So hey.
And then hearts will be great again. Hello, that's according to board member Dr. Nyahu.
Will be?
Yes.
You will be great
hearts
again?
Of oak, believe
What happened? So that means you are on the same level as the Kwaibi Brim 11 right now,
Oh,
right?
see, a day like this, that was yesterday, reminds us of not only of the great tradition in history, but also the huge opportunities which lie ahead of us,
Right.
and how far we can take this club.
The huge opportunities for Kumasi Asante Kotoko, Kumasi Asante Kotoko, to thump you, in recent years, you've not really fared well against us. I don't know what antidote your team has against us.
You're sounding like Kumasi Asante Kotoko is in a great place. You're not in a great place.
No, but here's the point. We may not be in a great place, but we're in a better place than Hartlepool. And any day, it's a better place
I disagree with you.
The Ghanaian Times this morning now, and just note it's 25 days to election 2020. Now, 14 people have been injured as fire gutted a gas filling station in the Volta regional capital of Ho. You can check out that story on page 13. Very sad scenes there. And today, as we engage core, it's only fitting that we also talk a bit about the disinfection that has helped the government to fight COVID-19, and that's according to the Deputy Savannah Regional Minister. Ghana observes Remembrance Day in Accra. Those strong men who stood in our stead, World War I, World War II, they were commemorated yesterday, and we continue with that observation. Now, there was a weekend downpour and 8 people perished in Accra. Very, very, very sad development there. The other day I hit the streets, around Hansonic, and it was, you also, I'm sure, the report from there. Well, in some places, it appears each time the rains hit, disaster would be in the offing. That's actually on page 3. I'll get a bit into that. NPP, NDC, and bloody clash in Karaga. 7 injured, 1 arrested. And the part I am happy about when it comes to this is how members of both political parties, leadership, were saying, look, let's not do this. Both sides, we're one. Let's not, get to the point where we're willing to kill one another and all of that. At least some of them were saying that. And I hope that's a message that resonates, especially with the youth. And that ties into the story on page 14, which says, don't allow anybody to use you to foment trouble. That's the youth being told that by the chairman of the Christ Apostolic Church International, Apostle George Yabua. When you go to the back page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, it says government commits $60 million to support private enterprises. And there's also this one, over 122,000 household sanitary facilities constructed nationwide. Madam Cecilia Abnat Dapa, Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, has been speaking on that matter. The Daily Dispatch next?
Yes, the Daily Dispatch. Front page says, battle for Ashanti, NPP targets over 70%. NDC gives a humble 30%. That's what they want from the Ashanti region. Of course, it's an MPP stronghold, so you can't dream too big. Mrs. Lordina Mahama joins NDC's 2020 campaign. It's been a while. Lots of people were asking, especially because the First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, has been very active, on the campaign trail. And they were asking, where is the former president's wife? Well, she has joined the campaign now. She started a familiarization tour of the Kintampo South constituency in the Bono East region on the 9th of November. So she's going around asking people to vote for her husband, basically because she says he's got the track record. Government's fights against COVID-19, Savannah region disinfected. And then Bosts made profits under NDC, stop propagating falsehood, according to Iwada, former Bost MD. On the back page, the full story of the battle for the Ashanti. But there's this other one. National Security Ministry meets NDC leadership, assures of adequate security during polls. And the press release that came out of this meeting, signed by the Information Minister, also did indicate that all security persons would have tags, so you could identify them as security men and women. Because remember that during that security brief by the election security task force, they did indicate that we'll have CID and national security officers. Subsequently, the conversation was okay, would we know them? Because if we can't identify them, then how can we report if any of them, misconducts or misbehaves, if you like, at a polling station? But during that meeting with the National Security Minister, it was cleared. So they would have tags that you could identify them. And then they've also said that they're going to give information to all related parties. So you know who is at the polling station at whatever time. That's good. But there's more to that on the back page if you want to read the Daily Dispatch newspaper.
Well, let's move on to the Daily Guide. Notice anything curious about the Daily Guide this morning?
Oh, yes. Color has changed.
Well, it's practically in black and white.
No, I think usually they've got a blue, but I see a pink.
Yes.
Oh, no. This is not the Ghanaian Times. This is the Daily Guide.
Yes, I'm saying the Daily Guide. So usually there would be some coloring, but today it appears to be more
it's plain.
black and
I thought it was the Times. That's why I said they usually have the blue.
Yeah, so it would have quite a mix of colors. Interesting one there. But it says on the front page, NDC failed in Upper East. That's according to the VP. You know, in recent times he's been touting the record of the MPP in the Upper East, and he says, look, putting us side by side is a no-brainer, so to speak. Those are his words, not directly. But anyway, pensioners happy with SNIT. And SNIT has come to the fore in recent times. A lot of people questioning even the benefits that pensioners are getting.
Really happy with SNIT?
That's why I find this very interesting. But that's on page 6. Now, Mahama sacks Amidou from NDC. And here's the bit. Mahama has been asking whether Amidou, a senior member of the NDC, still is with the NDC. That was the question that was posed. And of course, this story, latches onto that question and goes on to ask, is he a member of the party? Has he been sacked by former President Mahama? I think the party has its own protocols. And in recent times, for example, that constituency executive who reported Alhaji Sinari and was axed, it is formalized. And, Amidou card-bearing member, I don't know what, but...
but what's the significance of that?
The party has been saying there's no bad blood between them and Amidou. So this question, well, it begs questions.
You would never mount a political platform and campaign for you anyway. It's not something that he was doing. So
when it comes to the man, Amidou,
whether or not he's a card member,
when it comes to Martin Amidou, if you followed him across, never underestimate him. He's capable of anything. National security meets NDC gurus. That's on the back of the call for neutrality and impartiality. But this story is one that I will likely not do, so I just wanted to mention. Sometimes we paint the picture as though everything were bad in Africa and nothing good. $7.7 million stolen from Western German Customs Office. Now, if it were in Africa, you would hear all the hullabaloo, the hubbub about it, but check like, it's not only here. Never say die, Hearts fans told. Oh, those ones whose bones are rotting already. And look, while Hearts is celebrating 109 years and can't even manage a good bus, Kotoko, Brazilian handed number 10 shirt. Who was your last signing again?
Check the records. We have a new bus. Hello. Stop hating.
Let's do some other papers.
Ben. You know, when you celebrate your birthday, you get goodwill messages. Or you've been given us bad vibes since yesterday.
No, but we celebrated you yesterday. We've gone past yesterday. Now, it's your reality check.
You're not even our city rival.
It's your reality check now.
This is the Ghanaian Times. No, this is the Accra Times. Yeah, the Accra Times newspaper. I'm getting a bit confused because you're confusing me. Okay, Mahama better than Akufo-Addo, according to Eagle Party, urges Ghanaians to end the Sakawa government in 2020. Akamba energizes youth. Your toil and sweat would be rewarded. Agalgata security agencies swiftly act on all intelligence to avert any violence. MPP NDC visible than other political parties, according to Codeo. And then let's go out and vote as Ghanaians. That's the Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu. And then, okay, you do the business finder.
Well, there's talk about the ACFTA, the Africa Free Trade Agreement, and 74% of firms being in the dark. Then COVID-19. World Bank supports Ghana with $130 million. That story is on page 2. Inflation apparently dropping to 10.1%. And those are the major stories in the Business Finder newspaper.
Let me do my last paper, the Daily Statesman. On the front page, NPP women commence 14-day fasting ahead of December 7. NPP is for all. Bawumia shoots down NDC propaganda. National Security meets NDC ahead of December 7. I just shared a bit of the details, and they say they're going to be meeting all the other political parties. And I guess the only independent candidates in this race as well.
Siedu Walker. Well, the Ghanaian publisher this morning asked Mahama to return Airbus bribe money. Gabi jabs the NDC. Not that there's been any conclusion to that matter. But you've brought joy to the poor. Shama Chief tells Ekufuado. And then Savannah Minister, Lord's Market disinfection exercise. Those are some of the stories from that newspaper that I'd love to share. They also go on the foreign front and talk about clashes over Ivory Coast vote as neighboring states urge talks. You know, President Ouattara has gone for his 3rd term, something that the Constitution ordinarily didn't warrant. Some changes, so to speak, were made, and, well, the country is in a bit of turmoil. Hopefully it will not spill over.
Okay.
You're done with your stack of papers,
sir,
then?
Well,
the Catalyst this morning says, blame leaders for COVID-19 spike. Randy Abbey saying that. That's the same rhetoric that Dr. Asa Asante of the Political Science Department, University of Ghana, has been telling us. And there's a Kufuor and Ghana's elephant to follow Trump and USA elephant into the bush. They also talk about JM storming the Ashanti region. We'll be bringing you details of that this morning on the show. But let's start with the Daily Graphic.
Yes, so still the story on the front page, the banner headline, the death traps uncovered underground chambers pose danger. The paper is reminding us that it brought a publication back in 2018. It published a story which was headlined, Life Amidst Risk, Storm Drains Remain Uncovered. And it sought to draw the attention of Vodafone Ghana, the Electricity Company of Ghana, and the Ghana Water Company, as well as uncovered storm drains and the fact that they pose a danger to pedestrians and motorists alike in the capital. They were hoping that these organizations would do what is necessary and cover these open drains where they've laid, they sort of uncovered to lay their cables. But very little has been done. And 1.5 years on, the companies seem to have done very little to cover their utility vaults, in spite of the fact that they have become potential debt traps. So the paper is reminding us of a danger, but they're also saying that, we did say this 1.5 years ago, and the specific companies that we're hoping would cover up these drains have not done so. I don't know what else we could do to get them to do what is right.
Well, very sad development there. I've actually seen witnessed someone fall into one of these, and it was terrible. Because you go all of a sudden, so you're not expecting it, knee, jaw, everything. It was a sad spectacle. And sometimes you would see what you see in that photograph in the newspaper.
Especially so to alert drivers.
But an individual could still fall into that. And that's the problem. Imagine hitting the concrete there. This country.
But
I think some of the most basic things we can do.
We need the states, we need the assemblies to step in.
Right.
Because these places are not like in space. They are located somewhere. It's not enough for the media to highlight these situations. The assembly should even see it first, but let's just say
just
that
like they should have seen.
But we've highlighted.
That building that collapsed on the church people and all of that. 20+ years.
Yeah.
They saw it, ignored it, and that's exactly what goes on. I guess life is not is not given that much prominence.
Yeah, but even if you're not doing anything about it, but the media exposes these
highlights
things.
it.
Yeah.
The last time when I went to Hansonic, that's exactly what the people told me. They said, this problem has been with us for decades. They all come. In fact, a lot of people didn't want to speak to us. You know why? They said, you do this all the time. We talk and talk and talk. Nothing comes out of it. And so you can feel the pain of the people. They become inured to whatever is happening. And they just feel it's not really a change in government that will do anything for us.
I want us to encourage ourselves. You see, we can't stop talking. Even when we feel tired, we should encourage ourselves to talk, because the moment we stop talking, see that already they are not minding us. So imagine that we're not talking at all. That one, dear Bobo.
You have a very good
You've got to
point
encourage
there.
yourself. We have to speak, even if we're saying the same things every day.
The Ghanaian Times this morning, and I'm going to that story about the weekend downpour, 8 people perishing in Accra. Now, the story says 8 people, including a mother and her 5 children, got drowned during a downpour in Accra last weekend and on Monday. Now, the incident, which occurred at Bawelafa, Achimota, and Lakeside in Ashalibuche, involved adults and children between the ages of 4 and 10. Their lives just snuffed out. Now, their bodies have been retrieved by the police and taken to the police hospital mortuary for autopsy. And the PRO of the Accra Regional Police Command, Deputy Superintendent of Police, Ifiatenge, disclosed the tragedy to the Ghanaian Times in Accra yesterday. Just a bit of more information. She said on November 8, 2020, a mother and her 5 children who were sleeping in a kiosk at Ashalibuche were swept away by the rainwater on Sunday, and their bodies were later retrieved and taken to the police hospital. So there are similar incidents involving the others. I have always said, and I have newspaper clippings going all the way back to the 50s, the 60s, and the rhetoric is the same. The rains come, flooding happens, people die. For how long? 63 years. I mean, there are some incidents, force majeure situations that even advanced countries, like the tsunami situation we saw in 2006, thereabouts, among others, that even the most developed countries would struggle with. But here, the least downpours result in people dying. And I keep saying life is not given prime of place in our country, Ghana. But let me just do this story as well. Eschew politics of violence. It's on page 9 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The whole Catholic Diocese of the Justice and Peace Commission has asked political actors to conduct their political activities in an atmosphere of peace, devoid of violence. So that is the thrust of the message they're tying into the youth being told on page 14 not to allow anybody to use them to foment trouble. For me, it's a wrap with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Okay. Any others before we do myjoyonline.com? Well, let's see. Just about one to go. And this one would be the national security meeting, some NDC gurus. And the Ministry of National Security on Tuesday held a meeting with some officials of the opposition NDC upon a request by the latter. And the meeting, which came after a call by the NDC members of Parliament for neutrality and impartiality from the state security agencies in the conduct of this year's general election, discussed, among other, preparations by the National Election Security Task Force for the pending general election. And you would recall that on November the 5th, 2020, the minority NDC MPs called on the state security agencies to show this neutrality and impartiality. So the issue here being that ahead of election 2020, at least one side, some of the minority, ends thinking we need better when it comes to neutrality and security, even from the security forces themselves. But is there going to be the possibility of ever having an opposition party thinking that the police service, the apparatus of state when it comes to the use of force is not being partial towards them? Because you would realize that when the NDC is in power, the MPP cries foul. When the MPP is in power, the NDC cries foul. Looks like it's a cycle. Business as usual. All right, let's go to myjoyonline.com. Let's tell you what's making headlines on our page. This one. Our blessing has guaranteed NDC's 2020 election victory. Okay, it says your blessing has guaranteed NDC's 2020 election victory, Mahama tells Otunfo. What's interesting is the angle that the Daily Graphic picks.
where it says, for instance, that Otunfo says only God will determine the winner of the December 7 polls. And he said if any of the presidential candidate thought that he or she would become the next president, that person should know that only God had that knowledge. It is the good things you say and do that God endorses. That's a direct quote. Also, Indum's absence has not scared PPP. He asked me to take charge. That's the candidate, Bridget Jogbanuku. But in another interview, she actually admitted that the campaign for the 2020 polls has sharply hit a snag due to the absence of the party's founder, Dr. Papa Kwesi Indum.
Sometimes you ask yourself whether they coordinate, the people who manage them, because I've heard a lot of this. The last time it was David Apasera who was saying one thing, you recall, to me, and another thing when it comes to the party's ability to secure power.
I think it's
sometimes,
the place,
is it that they don't remember what they're saying?
No, I think it's the place where they are, when they are asked the questions. Because sometimes you really don't expect the question that's coming.
Well.
And you're either speaking the truth or you're managing the truth.
But I would say, from what I see, it's obvious that they are missing Papa Kwesi Indum in a way.
Of course, Papa Kwesi Indum brought, something to the campaign. He was very visible, had, some clear policies that you hear him say every now and then. But back on our page, Ejapa Dale sack Ofori-Atta for deceiving PPP's vice presidential candidate tells Akufo-Addo. On the Ejapa deal still, Martin Amidu deserves no applause. Okay, so these are stories that, we've mentioned to you before, including that of the Manasseh instructing lawyers to sue Kennedy Japan. But this one, we won't endorse calls for dismissal of Ofori-Atta, says the CSOs. There was a press conference yesterday, many things that they've had to say. We're actually bringing you a lot more on the back of that presser yesterday. They basically want prosecution. They want investigations and prosecution of officials who may have breached any laws in the Ejapa royalties deal. The deal going back to Parliament, they say no. They cannot repair the defects, so don't take it back to Parliament. We will share a lot more with you after sport here on our show.
Right, and of course, Lordina Mahama has hit the campaign trail.
Oh, yes.
From Ashanti, Bono East, and all of that. Interesting developments there. Finally, she shows her face on the campaign trail. Particularly interested because of my other show on Joy Prime, Campaign Trail. We're following them, should I say boot for boot? Well, talking about boots, it's time now for sports, and Ore Kwampofo will be telling you all about the booting that has been happening, not a la Hearts of Oak, of course, maybe.
Lots of friendlies and some shockers. Did France lose? Yes, they lost.
Yeah, some interesting stuff there. Well, sports is up next. Do stay with us.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM Sports with me, Ore Kwampofo. Well, today is the D-Day as Ghana welcomes Sudan at the Cape Coast Sports Stadium in what would be match day 3 of the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations, and as Ghana prepares to face Sudan, which has been a favorable opponent for the Black Stars. They faced the North Africans 11 times prior to today, winning 8, drawing 1 and losing 2. But despite having this positive record against the Sudanese, Coach CK Akona still expects a tough game from the North African side.
It's been very difficult to parry the boys based on the fact that COVID, we've been hit by a lot of issues. And those who managed to come, we really appreciate the fact that people like Jordan and others had it, but they were the first people to get here, and so we can only be proud of them, and we're happy. We have a full house now, believing that tomorrow we'll do well and win the match convincingly. Well, it's a team that I would say, compared to the issues we had, they didn't have that, because most of the players are home-based players. They've been together for quite some time now. But we're not really worried about that. It's a fact that they come and they would like to play defensive, make it difficult for us. But we are aware of what they're capable of doing, and that we're prepared. Very well. Today we'll go through some video sessions, and we'll let the guys know what ought to be done tomorrow, and hopefully we'll do well to carry the day. Of course, I'm looking at the captain, his brother, and the rest who got here first, and they were in a very difficult situation. This is a very good sign, positive sign that they want to give out their best. I'm strongly aware of what they want to do. They're determined. I have spoken to a lot of them, almost all of them, and I think they've given me the necessary confidence that I need, and I believe tomorrow they'll come out in a very positive way to deliver. I wish him a speedy recovery to join us quickly as he can. But of course, it's an opportunity for other guys to excel. If he had been here, he would play. It's a fact. Now he's not here. It's an opportunity for those who are here. Most of the time, they come and they're on the bench or whatever. And so we'll give the next person the chance to do well. And I think I'll give him the necessary support, whoever will play, to do well and play and help us to win.
Well, Ghana sit top of Group C with 6 points from 2 games, beating South Africa and Sao Tome. And right below Ghana, you will see Sudan and South Africa, who are both tied on 3 points. But then a win for Ghana would take the Black Stars an inch closer to securing qualification to the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations. And Andrea, you believes that the side would be going for all 3 points tonight when they play in the Cape Coast Stadium.
We are very proud to be here. I think any player that has been called up to the national team, it's a big honor to represent his nation, our nation, Ghana. I'm very pleased with the reaction from everyone. We had issues in the last camping with COVID, players who had it, etc. Been difficult for some clubs, letting their players come, being hard on it. But I think we showed that everyone is ready to play for the nation and knows what it means to wear the jersey. So I'm very happy. It's not been the best preparation because we didn't have a full squad early for coach to do whatever he wanted to do from the start, and our days were short. But now the squad is here. We trained well. We are fit. Hopefully there are no injuries, and then we will be ready to go. We are at home, and when we are at home, we have only one solution, is to get the 3 points. So we are going to do everything to make that happen. It's very important. As coach said, they have been together for a long time, so they were able maybe to build that attitude or that spirit that they wanted to build. But we have some of the old players who are back, like we said, Thomas, who is injured. Other players have maybe matches, etc. But I believe that the spirit is great. I believe that the players have one goal, and that if we are on 100%, there's no reason why we will not get the 3 points. So I believe that we will make sure that Ghanaians will be proud, and we'll put one step qualifiers into the AFCON.
Still on the qualifiers against Sudan tonight, and Secretary General of the Ghana Football Association, Harrison Prosper Addo, says that the football governing body has put on measures to ensure the Black Stars players are safe from COVID-19. About 8 players were tested positive after the team assembled in Turkey for international friendlies against Mali and Qatar last month. Though Prosper insists they did nothing wrong, they have actually enhanced protocols ahead of the game tonight.
In Turkey, we followed all the protocols. Indeed, the players who got the COVID afterwards had passed COVID tests before they board the plane. They did a number of COVID tests in Turkey. Some before each match. We play 2 matches. Per the protocol, you have to do COVID tests before you play each of the matches. After that, they did another before they left. You cannot put your finger on how people contract the disease. What you can do is to intensify your adherence to the protocols. Ronaldo got COVID. I don't think Ronaldo is careless. I don't think Ronaldo did not follow the protocols. We are dealing with a very difficult situation. And so what you can do is to adhere to the protocol. So our current match, you see how stringent it has become. CAF has their protocol, FIFA has their protocols, GFA has its protocols for the national teams, and we followed all of them. Currently, the Black Stars are in Cape Coast. They are alone in the hotel. We've carefully selected the hotel. Every staff member there, the security man, the policeman, cameraman, the media officer with the team, the management, they've all gone through to do their COVID test. And since they did it straight to camp, they've not come out. But you go to a stadium to train, you'd plan for your match and go and play. When they finish, they will do another one before they leave for Sudan. When they are coming from Sudan, they will do another one before they back on the plane. When they get here, they will do another one before they go to the airport to plane.
Well, that was the General Secretary of the Ghana Football Association, Prosper Harrison-Addo. But still on Ghana and their ambitions of winning an AFCON title soon, we now hear from Ghana midfielder Emmanuel Boateng, who plies his trade in Israel with Hapoel Tel Aviv. And he's been, speaking about CK Akono as the new Black Stars coach and also Ghana's chances of lifting an AFCON trophy soon.
For me, he's a very good coach, I think, because he played in Germany and also he coached a few clubs here, some of the big clubs like Asante Kotoko, Hatsufok, and I think he's doing well. So we should just give him some time, and then I know everything will be fine. We should just continue working hard, especially the players, and we should have a very good mentality, very tough one to focus on the pitch, because we have a lot of talent, in our nation, and a very good players as well. So with the talent and without hard working, I think it's never going to be possible. But with the talent and with hard working, I think we can do it together.
Well, let's now go to the Ghana Premier League, which kicks off in a couple of days' time, and Accra Great Olympics have a better squad than what they had in the truncated 2019-2020 league season, and that's according to their head coach Anna Walker. The Wonder Club strengthened their squad in the transfer window, which ended last month, and Anna Walker believes the new signings will certainly take the club to the next level.
Expectations are high this time at Great Olympics after signing young and talented players including Razak Kasim, Michael Yeboah, Charles Danso and Mujib Hakim. Head coach of the club, Anna Walker, says his new boys are ready to pick up the challenge at their new club.
In fact, last year we're having some young players and some old players, but unfortunately we've left the old players, and we've had some young ones who have come to beef up with the old players, and honestly they are doing good, and they are also here to make name for themselves, because as a coach, as a teacher, I have told them, experience is not bought from the market. Experience is what you learn from your coach and what you can do on the field of play. So they are here also to help Accra Great Olympics.
Last season, the Wonder Club captured the signatures of many veteran players, including Emmanuel Clotte, Olenu Ashiti, Ernest Sowa, and Godfred Saka. But the plan was futile as they won just 6 games and lost 7 after match day 15 in the truncated Ghana Premier League season. Coach Anna Walker believes his current squad is better than what he had in the last campaign.
I would say yes, because though I wasn't in the Olympics when the league started, I came to meet the players. But this is the players that I will say I recommended, and they came for tries, and what I saw in them is why I registered them. So they are here to do good for Olympics. Yeah.
The 2-time Premier League winners will be hoping to exact revenge against Midiama Sporting Club after losing against the Tokwa-based club by a 0-0 last season.
Remember, the Ghana Premier League kicks off on Saturday when Accra Hatsufok, they're still in jubilant mood, celebrating their 109th birthday. They will travel all the way to a difficult ground in Doma to face Aduana Stars in what should be an intriguing season opener. And hopefully we would be seeing more patronage from fans. If you're at home and you think you're close to a stadium and want to go watch a match, certainly go for it. But remember, it's just going to be 25% of fans. And before we also go, a quick reminder that the Black Stars would be facing Sudan tonight, 4 p.m. at the Cape Coast Stadium. So do cheer the Ghana team on as they try to secure qualification to the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations. My name is Oreko Wampofo, and that's the sports for now. The AM show continues right after this.
Thanks for staying with us here on the AM show. Now let's talk about the Ejapa royalties deal. There's an update because yesterday the 25 CSOs held a press conference where they called or pushing for investigations and prosecutions of persons who may have breached any laws. Let's speak to Dr. Yao Graham. He's Executive Director at Third World Network Africa, part of the 25 CSOs. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning to you and to your listeners.
Great. So what sticks out in the risk assessment report by the special prosecutor, for which reason you think that this can be pursued further when you say investigate and prosecute persons who may have breached our laws?
I mean, the report talks about a number of laws that may have been broken. For example, the Public Procurement Act. There may have been some instances of fraud and so on and so forth. So those were the things. But the main concern of the statement was not on potential matters arising. It's important to underline that the focus of the CSO statement was in relation to the consequences and implications of the OSP report for the fate of the Ejapa dealing. I mean, this coalition was set up primarily to work together on the Ejapa deal. So that remains the primary focus. And the main points made by the statement was that the OSP's report, risk assessment report, confirmed many of the things that the coalition has expressed a concern about. And not only the coalition, but many other well-meaning Ghanaian citizens and organizations who are interested in how our common extractive resources are managed in the best interest, not only of this generation, but also future generations. And that confirmed a number of things that we worried about. And the main call, therefore, was that if you add all that together, the demand really that this Ejapa deal cannot be sustainably repaired, or its foundations have been knocked out, and therefore really the whole thing should be ended and a new opportunity created for a broad-based discussion about how best to optimize the benefits of our mineral resources for Ghanaians. I think that is the primary concern. Our concern, first and foremost, is that the Ejapa deal really is dead. Its death was foretold by many of the questions raised by previous organizations and individuals, and it's been confirmed by the report of the OSP and also the scope of the faults that need to be addressed, which were admitted explicitly and implicitly in the president's statement. If you argue these together, it is not a sustainable deal, and therefore it should be taken off the table. This is the primary message that we want to the Ghanaian public to get from our statement.
Even though the president has acted on the report, the coalition doesn't also seem impressed by what the president has done.
Yes, and we explained that in the statement, because the OSP report is very extensive. It raised a whole range of issues. The president gave the finance minister the opportunity to respond to that statement, to the report, our statement notes the fact that indeed the finance minister was given the opportunity to respond, and it was important for us to draw attention to that because we want to be fair to all sides in terms of how we deal with matters arising. And then we evaluated the response of the finance minister and also the conclusions the president drew. Now, let me come to the president. The president, in his response to the OSP report, we can conclude that essentially he respected the issues raised by the report. It was on that basis that he asked his finance minister to respond. And then after that response, he then issued a statement about what he thought should be the steps to take. Now, those steps include asking the finance minister to go back and deal with the questions raised about valuation, to talk to various stakeholders about the concerns that have been raised about the Japan deal, and then also cure defects in the agreements and process, and then directs that the matter go back to Parliament. Now, if you take the scope of the issues raised by the OSP report, it is difficult to see what there is to take to Parliament. Because the OSP's report, for example, fundamentally impugns the documentation and agreements that have been produced because of some of his conclusions about, illegalities and absence of due process, and even concluded, for example, that the mandate and appointment of the transaction advisor could be considered illegal because of the failure of process, legally based process. So if these things are there, and in a certain sense, therefore, the agreements are a nullity, and also an admission by the president that the questions raised about valuation have validity. Okay, all these things add up to the fact that really this is a fundamentally flawed idea, badly implemented, and therefore what would be there to cure, to take to Parliament. So it was on this basis that we said, even though, with all due respect, the president has sought, and to his credit, to respond, positively and promptly to the OSP report, we think that really his response does not deal with the full implications of the document which found the basis of his intervention. And I think this is something that, as part of a culture of open debate among citizens and political office holders, citizens have the right to make this comment and to urge people to evaluate the president's intervention against the report that was put out and judge whether indeed his response is adequate. And we have no doubt that that response is adequate. The logic of his response, the objective logic of response is to say, actually, this is such a bad deal, and we should quietly bury it. It may be that, of course, it will be difficult to expect the president to come to that crushing conclusion. His proposal that the whole thing be deferred till after the election or to the next Parliament seeks to take the heat out of the situation, defer the issue, but we really think we should not be deferring it, we should be closing it.
Is Parliament capable of saying or coming to that conclusion that you also draw as CSOs in terms of the defects cannot be repaired?
Well, Parliament's role in this matter is to deal with an approval, to approve things put before it. Parliament, as the OSP report found, sadly went through a farcical process with this document. Complex transactions that had been in preparation over a 2-year period are rushed through Parliament in less than 24 hours. So they've done their bit in purporting to approve the agreement. Now, so the president's proposal is for some defects to be cured and something taken back to Parliament. Now, we are saying that actually there is nothing, you must have something to take back to Parliament. The scope of what the president recognizes has to be done. It's so sweeping that Parliament cannot be the starting point of this. And in a certain sense, he implicitly recognize when he says that the minister should undertake consultations and do some correction and so on. If something comes before Parliament, then of course they will consider it. But we've heard also from both sections of Parliament. I mean, the minority said they will not consider it. The Finance Committee, they feel they've done their work. So if you add that together with the reactions coming from society, I think we as a Ghanaian people, and it's important to underline this, because the Japa deal, one of the things that it has put a finger on really is what should be the guiding principles through which the president, acting on behalf of the Republic, fulfills his fiduciary obligations to the Ghanaian people in terms of the management of the non-renewable, extractive resources of this country. For the longest time, governments have assumed a de facto executive ownership of the mineral resources. The Japa debate is drawing attention back to the fact that the owners of this resource, the beneficial owners, are the Ghanaian people. So therefore, when something like this comes, there's a debate about it, the focus should be, how are the Ghanaian people responding to the ways in which the mandate that's supposed to be exercised in their interest is being fulfilled? And the overwhelming reaction is that this mandate is not being fulfilled by the Japa deal. Take it off the table.
As you conclude in your statements, Mr. Yao Graham, you say in the point 2 that steps should be taken to investigate and prosecute breaches of any law. And I wonder who that sentence is directed at.
The OSP has power to investigate instances of suspected acts of corruption. This document is not an investigative report for potential acts of corruption. It is an assessment to see whether the Japa deal contains elements that could lead to corruption. That is why it goes back to the executive who are driving the agreement to say, listen, we did an assessment. This is what we found. So can you take steps to make sure that the danger that we've anticipated does not come to pass? But the report itself hints that there are cases where breaches of the law may have occurred, and so on and so forth. So we are saying that in fulfilling the logic of its office, if the OSP has indeed found some basis for further investigation, they should follow it. And let me hasten to add that actually the Japa case is a seminal moment where this office is trying to come to life on a very important matter of national interest. The report hints at the fact that the office is under-resourced in a number of ways. So it will be a great development if it is not simply the Japa deal which is abrogated, but the fact that its logic leads to the strengthening of the OSP's office, its better resourcing, and also its follow-through on the things that it indicates in the report, and goes on to show that it's not only capable of making assessment to make proposals to avert corruption, but also that it has the political strength to go forward and deal, with cases of corruption that may be connected, the illegalities that may be connected with the Japa deal.
This coalition has been very consistent. In fact, you came out even when there was no risk assessment report by the special prosecutor. How far would you continue to go in drumming home your demand?
Well, the Constitution gives citizens a lot of rights and responsibilities. Let me draw your attention, for example, to Article 37(2) of the Constitution, which enjoins the government to pass laws to facilitate the rights of citizens to defend their interest in the development process. This is a constitutional injunction, which means that citizens have the right to speak out on issues that they feel affect the development of the country. It's not simply the general provisions about freedom of expression in the human rights chapter of the Constitution you're talking about. There's a specific provision, the directive principles of state policy, which the Supreme Court has ruled is justiciable and binding. So how far we'll go depends on how long this thing remains alive and how far the scope is. And already we know that many citizens, fortunately, have expressed a view on this subject. The report raises a number of things which will require further follow through. For example, the issues about conflict of interest that the report raises. What it highlights is that the constitutional provisions and the code of conduct on conflict of interest, would need to be kind of developed a bit more clearly so that, there's rigor in those provisions. Secondly, one of the things also clear is that how the functionaries of the Republic manage the country's non-renewable resources. Some more extensive and more clearly articulated principles may be needed to fill the gap between the general provisions of the Constitution about public ownership and vesting in the President on behalf of the people to the day-to-day management where really we have these kinds of problems. Because this is not the first time, for example, that Parliament has rushed through a major agreement on extractive resources in this country. So all these things go to there are a number of different elements. The governance processes and the role of the legislature has also been highlighted by this. The issues around conflict of interest has been highlighted. So there are a number of subsidiary issues embedded, in the Ejapa issue, which will be worthy of following up once the strategic objective, which is to say that this Ejapa deal is bad for the people of Ghana. That remains the primary focus. If that is achieved, and we are sure that many people, from what we know about other reactions to the OSP report, see that it has affirmed this demand of very broad sections of the population. And we hope that the president is listening, the government is listening, and that this thing is killed, and we can return to a more broad-based discussion about how best to optimize the benefits of mineral resources for the country. That remains the objective, and we'll continue to work for it.
So as we wrap up, Dr. Graham, is there consideration in terms of a petition directly to the president, seeing as he may have missed some of the things that you raised in this statement?
I've always been concerned about the use of the word petition, because historically, subjects petition the monarch because they don't have rights. We live in a democratic republic founded on the equality of citizens. We elect one of our own to represent us to lead the country. When we have concerns, it is our right to speak out as politely as possible to whoever is involved in that role, including the president. The relationship between the president and the citizens of Ghana is not a relationship of subjects to the monarch. It's a relationship of accountability of the first citizen to his fellow citizens based on our equality and our shared sovereignty as the owners of the republic. And I think this is an important political point to make. We should speak out as a matter of right, politely, but the relationship is not one of petitioning the monarch.
I thank you very much for your time, Dr. Yao Graham. He's Executive Director, Third World Network Africa, put in a lot more spotlight following their statement yesterday and that press conference where they call for a number of things in the royalties, the Ejapa royalties deal. I guess highlight of that is the fact that this deal can no longer go on. There shouldn't be, that deferring it back to Parliament and also pushing for those who may have breached any of the laws to be prosecuted. So a proper investigation and subsequent prosecution. Is it Thursday? Let's do some tech news now. A camera has become one of the essential features prospective buyers look out for when deciding to get a phone. Though the camera is crucial at any event, recently people would like to take shots of disturbing situations and people in distress when they could come to their aid. What has been the driving force behind this urge to film people in distress and put it especially in the social media space. Love FM's Kwesi Deborah has been exploring the phenomenon in this report.
The fire had found the right moment to pounce on their fleshes. Their bodies have been shackled by a tricycle which served as a brake for loose truck. While the petrol-backed flame was trying hard to overcome the little flame left in their muscles, only a driver among the hundreds of motorists plying Aronga Junction had thought of his extinguisher. The rest were seen busily putting their phone cameras on and finding suitable positions to capture the burning of a pregnant woman, her son, and driver. The Good Samaritan was helpless with his nigh empty extinguisher. The fire personnel arrived to find remains which seem to have attempted, please, to coat humans. Those who had missed the flames early on were vigorously scavenging the ashes an hour later. The Ashanti Regional Fire Command, ACFO Joshua Ngwa, was furious.
It saddens my heart to talk about that, because from those who were at the spot initially, the car dragged the pragya for about 3 minutes. In the process, there were sparks, there were fuel. So there's a total filling station which always have a fire extinguisher there. One person could have gone there to take the extinguisher because they were knocked down by the truck. Definitely the three of them were unconscious. So somebody could have taken the extinguisher from the total filling station, doused the fire at its incipient stage, then rescue the people. But anybody who came there had to bring up his phone to record.
ACFO Ngwa had on a number of occasions seized phones of people who had witnessed a gory accident. But a driver who was part of those who pulled their phones to record that tricycle incident says he wanted to have evidence of the incident.
Evidence. Fire service front by project depending in video. By time and
Dabo's colleague driver, Dominic Joe, wouldn't agree less. A sociologist at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Dr. Bullard Foucault, once witnessed a student collapse and other students filming instead of helping out.
Nobody wants to touch the student. Everyone removes their phone and start taking images and pictures and recording.
Dr. Foucault believes the advent of technology has caused us to live online. Dr. Foucault therefore points out a sense of satisfaction through attention from virtual friends.
The world of the internet is such that even though you may have a lot of friends, you are not connected to them in ways that you would have if they were there physically. And so the only benefit you get from them is when they like your post or when they share your posts. So that replaces that social bond that we had physically. And if that is the case, then what happens is that people always strive for things that will get them more likes and more shares, because that is the only way that they get some kind of interaction with the people they associate with. And so when something happens, the first instinct is to take it and put it on social media, to be the first to report, even though they don't work in the media space. They don't leave that responsibility to the media people, because their self-identity is developed from their image online. They need those likes and shares. They need to be able to say that I was the first person to bring this news or report this or share this image.
Though the traditional media outlets are expected to have their presence felt on YouTube, the new channels also had mounted the same video. Viewership ranged from 23 to as much as 3,000. CEO of YouTube channel Jobless TVGH, Ofori Amponsa Mensa, says would not mind adding this video to his over 130 videos to make some money.
When we go on social media, we try to search video which people are watching most, then we upload them to our channel to gain something from it. Yeah.
Dr. Foucault believes renewal of family bonds and education on how to help have become crucial.
And we can begin to educate people on one, how to help. When someone is in need, we should begin to also shame those people who share images of people in distress. We shouldn't like their tweets or like their images on Instagram and Facebook. No, we should begin to rebuke them online.
So we need to respect others and try and help. That issue of that habit that we've cultivated of phone recording should go.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Deborah.
Welcome back. And so on that note, we cross over to the Ashanti region, where we're going to be bringing you some matters as our man on the beat, Maxwell Agbagba, has actually hit the campaign trail in Kumasi following former President Mahama's tour there. Now, the NDC flag bearer says he will grant general amnesty to all persons jailed for small-scale mining for engaging in that, activity and related offences if elected president on December the 7th, 2020. That, among other things, that he's been making mention of the construction of a polyclinic to cater for the health needs of some members of the community in the Ashanti region. Let's cross over now and interact with Maxwell Agbagba, who's been on the beat and who actually has a lot for us. But before we get to that, there's a bit of a wrap on what exactly the former president has been up to, former President Mahama.
The Swami magazine was brought to a standstill as the NDC presidential candidate John Mahama arrived. Hundreds of people, some of them draped in the NDC colours, stood on buildings, cars to listen to him. He says he will transform the metal engineering and vehicle repairs hub. For places like the Swami magazine, all the roads and drainage system will be improved to make it appealing for people to bring their cars here. Especially Swami magazine, if I'm elected, we will construct all the roads here and construct gutters, so this place will not be muddy when it rains.
As I said, Mode and Dadwa, any fidie and I told the Nipe na Obehia, I am Santem.
You work with metals. People get hurt here. You have a clinic, but we will upgrade it to a polyclinic.
Now, my polyclinic no be strong. If you say you be accident and emergency center,
there will be an accident and emergency center. Normally, you find them in major health facilities, but the polyclinic will have one.
And so, that polyclinic, a accident and emergency center.
He has also been reiterating his promise to completely abolish the legislation that bans the importation of salvaged or accident cars into the country.
Why
have you suspended the legislation? It has to be completely withdrawn from Parliament. I know because of elections, they are saying the law is there but will not be implemented. They are waiting to see the outcome of the elections. If we are elected, we will completely abolish that legislation.
On day 2 of the NDC presidential candidates tour of the Ashanti region, He started from the Moshi Zongo Park in the Menshal North constituency, where he met some Muslim leaders, residents, and Zongo chiefs. Former President Mahama has been touching on a wide range of issues there at the Moshi Zongo Park. He stated that on a free senior high school policy, if the NDC is elected into power, the party will change and modify the free senior high school policy.
Well, let's tap into what exactly the former president has been saying on the back of those promises. Quite a number of them, with regard to those who had been arrested for illegal mining, among others. Let's cross over now to the Ashanti region. Maxwell Agbagba is my colleague there, and he actually joins us. Maxwell, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Now, what can you report? What has been going on with regard to the former president, the NDC's campaign?
Well, he's been saying a lot of things. He's been giving the people the message that he brought to them. One of them has to do with what he calls a total reform of the mining sector. Well, for some of the communities, a lot of the communities that we visited, he told the people that if the NDC is elected into power, the NDC will make sure that persons who were incarcerated for engaging in illegal mining will be freed. He acknowledges that indeed the people have offended, have committed a crime against the state, but he says that as part of a broader mining reform, we need to start on a clean slate, and that is why he will pardon all the people who have been arrested for engaging in illegal mining. In fact, it has generated a lot of conversation here in Kumasi, and today we are here very close to the KJT market. Just behind me is the KJT market. One of the projects that the former president has been touting during his visit here. In fact, yesterday when he visited the Asantehene, he mentioned that this is one of the projects that he is really proud of, and he's mentioned it many places where we have visited. So today we are roving very close to it, and we'll be finding out from people what they make of his promise to free persons who were incarcerated or who were jailed for engaging in galamsey. Let me get closer to some of them here. Let's see who we can speak to. Sir, you're welcome to join us. Akwaba.
Thank you.
Pacha Frausen.
Ofori.
Okay, Ofori. Pacha, President Mahama called the campaign or say to Abamana na Oba power. Woman I chi omo say omo ye galamsey omo nyina obeja omo mpese mbisa say uju hu say
me ne na nya adwene. Okay. Ezan say oman no emra wom. Okay. Na yehunu ne galamsey fo eye wo environment titru ne yensuo. Okay. Yese no ewo atifin na ekọ anafo na obi akosa na wanom na wakonya yare. Okay.
Well, he says he does not agree with the NDC presidential candidate because we saw the harmful effect of illegal mining and how it polluted our water bodies.
And Emma Omani Nina Bejitum say, yen stop what the end of said the Baya yen soon ye bet me a dinini. Na Akoyi Amaye. And in this a buying what is was Ablane shares Amrano. Na yeji tumu na obi fumoy na ba ne twen na so na so also ba na so be ne one kasa na nyamra so na wo ba bedie mi hu se nyamra na wo ba bedi so onzo se ubedi ade so a usua ya o se ubebo Ghana emra ho ban so na ave bo Ghana ho mra ho ma na obi ato Ghana mra na wo se wo de wo koyi na pie sa so akoye galamsey enti wo yi na pie na de okobo okro no e de na kotum so e ono so yi na pie ala ba ne de. It is a mimi who says, okay, and that's own family, baby boo, a minor. Name of the Ebesutu, Ama Ebia, near Wope, what achievement was Aka, Entinama or Preso Baba, Abedi Mampeni. Okay,
essentially what he's saying is that he disagrees with the NDC presidential candidate. He says if you're elected as president, you take an oath and you swear to protect the states in all forms. He thinks that if this is allowed, it would more or less be like encouraging, illegal act because he says that Galamsey is an illegal act, and these persons we are talking about have been jailed because they committed that particular act. He's saying that if you are freeing them, what about the armed robbers robbers who go about stealing stealing from people as well? Inti would you also but also to say a man for bebrena as dia omedi kranomonya but ono say so ba I say ni pape mu a on person mo sesa mining no omo the new mining reforms there ba inti on person start on a fresh slate.
Okay. Menene ya dwene se mane no opese yetu eyoma no ade ba se yetu ne yetu no kwampa so a why not? Okay. Enko ha obi se bi mimi nkotu na nafo na de ote atifi mimi nkotu na atifi na de ote na nafo nkohunu ho amane na mimi mfa misika anya dai enko because I hwe mane na wo mo ye ne sesi a na wo be ko ba bi ti se mimi krom de mimi krom abekwa abodomo eye emfato ho a wona eye mane no omo to se chas water ensuo edifri krom ene omo akonom adentira ensuo so na omo te ho so ma se ensuo no edie ne yete wona yensu yenya sika nkoto sa chas water na ze nkoto sa ensuo ni bi enom no yenkonom no na ne enwu nya sa enti sa wo so be ne kwampa so de afan no na mom de mimi hu ze aban so de so no so abomoden se oye small scale mining e de ama community bia enti eno na wo be chemu kina de I agree with you and yeah I agree with you.
Thanks so much. Well, the point he's making essentially, he's saying that he comes from a community where there was illegal mining, and at a point the people were actually buying water from other areas to drink, although they were very close to the bank of the rivers. He thinks that if this is encouraged, we'll go back to the old state that we found ourselves some time ago. It's interesting this is coming up, especially because in the areas where the NDC presidential candidate made the promise, it was received with overwhelming endorsement. A lot of the people I spoke to on the ground told me about how economic activities especially. In fact, yesterday when we had the Swami magazine, a lady I met who sells in the market says business is no longer good because illegal mining is not, Galamsey is not happening. Let me find out from this gentleman what he also thinks. Can you bet me up? Name on that. Minimum bonkomo.
Ganyo bisu aneme bonkomo.
Yeah, first.
You from me, Mr. Japan Moses Kodua.
Enkomo yeah boy na unso wadwin train say.
Efa enkomo no de ya hwen ho.
Galamsey ne ho. Former President Mama says oba woma omuya ya chi omudi atumu no be jom.
Yo, Erade di mu no, me hu si ase Galamsey abai so abreki. Galamsey adwuma e wo Ghana sama ye nkoye. Ebinom nso akoye. Me hu se kro no no mabo so mo ye adwuma. E na ya chi wo mo. Di so mo ye adwuma na ya chi wo mo de ya. Emra ne ba sa abai so abreki yi no. E na se o chi wo mo. Se na wo mo ye na ya chi wo mo. Erade di mu no. Se wo so abreki ya de na wo ho kwai se utimi chire hu nipa kotumu. Nti eno de ka menko ade a. Sa de ya wo se adwuma no wo mpe na wo yenya ye no. Se mrantie bi ana nipa bi num nso akoye na ya chi wo mo de ya. Ene ya hu ni kwai se wo ye dan. Wo chi wo mo. Etwa se ojai wo mo. If we say ne uhwemu a ete no wo se unua bi fom wa fache no. Enti sa ba ne sa na minimu fa ho.
Who supported their NDC presidential candidate John Mahama?
Manage ho pa.
I didn't know we need you.
Nienti a manage ho ne say o se Galamsey fu no omunya Galamsey adwuma. Edi so omunya ide de ya na ye say wasama o mo ye de ya. Ene na etwa so o ye de yi. Ojai o mo nso o mo ye de. Mra o ka say omunya na o che o ma na asese ye no che o mo. E wona mpese mbusa yi. And or three woman, and I say, what's our more ye day?
I say, Wama, Yachi almost a seer, Omoda prison. As I say, or the new mining reforms never banning Sidon. Woman which a prison is here, no, or bed jam, which Abaman no about bed jam.
Manager who are so jaw. Aye, and I'm just adding here. And the anti so jaw, when they say, and maybe I knew who I say a day, it may actually, Mamma Yam from so.
See, I'm running, I want to say, Ukoyeg. Galamsey, I say, chew the two.
See a chew.
Got mine, I say,
just a Mrano Yajumasa.
Mrano,
I was Ghana, I say, Okoya Galamsey, I chew.
Ghana.
And I know Okoya Galamsey near Chodia, now near Wyam Funsuan, I had the Yachu Atumudia. Tadi, not just a Juma away and Yachu, not just Wyam Funsu. Anna, near Make Meboa. And this Ankaya, dear said Jumani Yajai dia. And you know, Monsua, Yachu woman, so Cassia Yade, Yajai woman. It is Anna Mihunefa. Okay. There's a Jumane Koso. And our Mugumu. And yes, sir. It you almost quite by Utimijai Homo. Okay, well, it's been a very convoluted conversation, but essentially what he's saying is that he thinks that persons who've been arrested, for engaging in Galamsey should be freed. He supports the call being made by former President John Mahama. Let me find out from this man also who's selling here. Openyi Michao. Bibi Aboko. Okay. Former President John Mahama say mutu abama no na oba. Woma e chi omo say omo ye Galamsey omo da jail sisi ano oba obeja omo. Your person eji wa dwentwe. Won say.
Oh. Isa obi sabe Ghana ha obi di bone. Na samra na chi no a. Sa wo say edi ni tumu a emra ni di ni dia. E wo say emra ni di no. Se emra ni dia emra ni no. Nti to no ba no office se emra ni wo mo dia. O ho kwa so yi wo me se emra di wo mo dia. O say edi wo mutum.
Okay. See the emra say so ko illegal man na chi wa. And say with them. But no say sisi a person oba just started on a new slate as part of new mining reforms our day ba. Nti ono ba obeja wo ma ya chi omo dia.
Ne se emra no wo be yi afiri ho ana se emra na da ho no wo yi afiri ho ana se emra no
wo ma omo dem sisi ano obeyi omo obema yi omo epi.
Ena mi kire se emra da ho se illegal mining wo ya ye chiw. Ena o so obeyi omo epi. Nti wo yi wo se emra no wo busu ana se wo yi afiri nti na emra ben so no ogina odi yi omo afiri bo.
Say oya mampenyi awasa to me no at a point to grant pardon to people who've been arrested and jailed.
Na just say no. So I understand say say obi twituo ekokum obi a wadi awu emra che say de ni tumu. Na oya mampenyi ni no say madi awu nti mitumi ni nti wakum obi kura mi di jaw. Eno e baboye.
Inti me bisa say we support and as
and me support.
Okay.
Me support.
Okay. May I say? Okay, so you heard him also there. He says he does not support that promise to free persons who have been incarcerated for engaging in illegal mining. As I was saying initially, this is quite different from what we witnessed, in the communities that the former president and NDC presidential candidates, visited. There, when he made the promise, a lot of people were screaming, shouting in support of the promise that he made. It's quite different, completely different from the reaction that we get in here, very close to the KJT market. It's quite understandable also because a lot of the communities that we visited were a bit closer to the mining towns. So we're learning that some of the people actually moved from those communities to the mining towns to go and do illegal mining, to go and do Galamsey. But now that security agencies have clamped down on the activities, all of them have moved back to those communities where they originally came from. And a lot of them have been complaining that they really have lost their source of livelihood. So it makes sense that in those communities, you get an endorsement of what the NDC presidential candidate is saying. But as I mentioned earlier, it is at variance and completely different from what the reaction we are getting here very close to the KJT market.
Well, thank you very much. That is Maxwell Agbagba, who brought us up to speed on developments in the Ashanti region with regard to former President John Dramani Mahama, the promises he's been making, and how the people have been responding to those. But today we do something very important. 2 days from now, we actually mark World Diabetes Day. And today being a Healthy Thursday, we're kickstarting rather early, ending diabetes. But how exactly do we go about it? some 700 million adults aged between 20 and 79 years will live with the disease by 2045. That is a morbid projection there. Currently, as of 2019, we're told some 463 million people were living with diabetes. Now, this morning, to delve into the matter, we are joined by Dr. Charlotte Ampong, who is an endocrinologist. That's quite a mouthful of a word, endocrinologist. And she's going to be sharing with us some very important details when it comes to diabetes, its prevention, the statistics or the rate in Ghana, and what can be done to mitigate the situation. I'm sure, as you can see on your screens now, 79% of adults with diabetes were living in low and middle income countries. And guess what? That includes us right here in Ghana. On that note, let me say a very good morning to Dr. Charlotte Ampong. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. It's a healthy Thursday, and we're hoping that a lot of those watching us will pick the tips needed for all of us to stay healthy. But this phenomenon, medical phenomenon called diabetes, what exactly is it? I pose that very simple question because a lot of the time people ask you, oh, is it too much consumption of sugar that leads to diabetes? Is it when your pancreas malfunctions and isn't producing enough insulin? What exactly is diabetes?
So diabetes is a condition in which your body finds it very difficult to manage appropriately the blood sugar. And usually when we eat any form of carbohydrates after digestion, this would eventually become glucose. Now, glucose is extremely important for the body cells because they use it as energy. And in order for the cells to be able to use this glucose, they need a hormone called insulin. Now, this insulin is produced from a very important organ that lies behind the stomach called the pancreas. Now, within this pancreas, we have certain very important cells that produces the hormone insulin. Now, in people who have diabetes, for one reason or the other, their bodies either do not produce enough insulin, or they may be producing enough of it, but their bodies are not recognizing or making very good use of it. And so as a consequence of that, their cells are unable to pick up the glucose. So because of that, when you check their blood sugars, you find that it's really high, simply because their bodies are unable to utilize the glucose from the digestion. Many a times people feel that it's because of the name, and especially when you come into our local parlance, people feel that it's because people eat too much sugar.
That's why area, like we call it in Tree.
That's why they end up with diabetes. But that inherently is inaccurate. Generally, there are risk factors that will predispose a person to developing diabetes. And one of the major risk factors for developing diabetes is obesity. And I can understand why people link sugar with diabetes, because if you take in too much refined carbohydrates, it's likely that you may end up putting on a lot of weight. And so that may predispose you to diabetes, but not necessarily because the person is eating too much sugar. So with diabetes, any form of carbohydrates, excessive use of carbohydrates may predispose you to developing diabetes later on, especially if you were to put on a lot of weight.
Right.
Okay.
Doc, I would just have you, elaborate further on that point, because when you look at our staple diets here in Ghana, we consume a lot of carbohydrates. Now, you're talking of refined carbohydrates and all of that. Can you break it down? I'm sure that those watching us, listening to us this morning would want to find out, what are refined carbohydrates?
Okay, so when it comes to carbohydrates, we have the natural and the whole grains, and then we have those that have been processed. Right. Okay, so for instance, if I were to give you examples of our natural carbohydrates, maybe our plantain, our yam, our cocoa yams, and even rice. But when it comes to the refined foods, you may be thinking about some form of flour, processed, let's say pastries, all the sweetened things you can think of, whether it's ice creams and meat pies and any sort of.
So all the croissants,
yes,
the cakes and all of those, they fall into those categories?
Those kind of refined carbohydrates. When it comes to making choices, we want people to choose more of whole grains, okay? So indeed, our plantain is still healthy, our yam is still healthy, but we just want you to minimize how much of it you are eating, okay? So, for instance, if a person is going to take a meal, the amount of carbohydrate should be minimal compared to the, let's say, the stew or soup portion. You can introduce a lot of vegetables as well within your meal to help make you fuller without having to eat too much of the carbohydrates as well. Yes. But when it comes to the other risk factors, it's not just obesity that's a risk factor for diabetes. By living a sedentary lifestyle, not having enough exercise, it's a reason why a person may develop diabetes. Again, people who come from families with a history of diabetes. So for instance, if your mother or your father has diabetes, then you inherently have a higher risk of developing diabetes.
Right.
And so such an individual would really have to be careful about what they are eating so that they don't put on weight, make sure they are engaging in enough exercises so that they don't develop this type 2 diabetes.
So it's hereditary. If you find out it runs in your family, it
yes.
means you stand the risk of getting the disease, and so you should start watching out.
Yes, it's extremely important. So if you have a relative who has diabetes, you have to understand that you are at risk, and so you must engage in all the lifestyle changes that would minimize your risk of developing diabetes.
Does this apply for young people as well, very young children and all of that? At what point do you think, or do you say, well, it runs in my family, I ought to start watching what I consume? At what point do you look at that?
So indeed, diabetes can affect both children and adults, okay? But generally, the type that tends to affect adults is the type 2.
Right.
Both type 1 and type 2 do have a hereditary component. So even if you are a child, you still have to watch your diet, because these days we are having a lot of children coming in with, because of obesity, also having diabetes. Although we do know that more often than not, when the younger people do have diabetes, it may be the type 1. That may not necessarily have to do with their weight gain as well.
Now, let's look a bit at the statistics. Let's focus the camera on Ghana. Now, we've seen how globally almost 470 million people in 2019, suffering diabetes in different forms, type 1, type 2, and all of that. But when you come to Ghana, what do the statistics reveal? I'm talking about age, I'm talking about gender. What are the dynamics when it comes to Ghana?
Okay, so unfortunately in Ghana, we do not have so much data, but a recent meta-analysis that was done put our prevalence at around 6.4% of the population, which is quite a significant number. There's still the need to break down the data to be able to give details on various ages, but currently our prevalence stands at 6.47 of our general population.
Now that, off the top of my head, 10% of the population, that is about 30 million, would be 3 million. And so if we're looking at 6%, that would be maybe anything between 1.8 and 2 point something million. That's quite a number.
Yes, that's really staggering. And indeed, that is for people that we think we have diagnosed. And globally, we understand that 1 in 2 people who have diabetes have not been diagnosed. So if you extrapolate this number, then it may be way higher than we are even thinking. So indeed, diabetes is a global problem, and it's a big problem in Ghana as well.
So very topical issue, but I also know that, for example, it leads to many other things. Diabetes can lead to blindness. It can lead to the amputation of limbs, because sometimes you get sores that don't heal and amputation has to happen. Kidney failure, even cardiac arrests and all of that. How do we nip it in the bud? I know you can't, maybe you can, but creating a society where no one has diabetes might be tricky, it might be difficult, but what more do we do to ensure that people know, what are the causes of diabetes and how to cater for themselves, even if they have it?
So we need to tackle the risk factors, and we also need to do more education. So in terms of tackling the risk factors, like I mentioned, especially for type 2, it's the weight gain that's the problem. So we need to make sure that our people have a healthy diet, more in whole grains, are avoiding the refined foods like the white breads, the ice creams, the as much as possible. White rice is also a problem, so we can opt for something like brown rice, and then we eat a lot of vegetables as well, because that is filling and also doesn't contribute to the weight gain. But aside that, we need to have a culture of exercise, because generally in our society, exercise is not something that we are really used to. We need to incorporate that into our day-to-day activities to make sure that we stay fit and then we stay healthy. Apart from that, you know, another risk factor that didn't come up again was something, it was one called gestational diabetes. And I want to use this platform to talk about it, because oftentimes this gestational diabetes is diabetes that a woman gets while she's pregnant, usually from the 24th to the 28th week. So many of these women originally, before they got to that level of pregnancy, do not have any sugar problems, but later on develop that. Now what happens is that usually at the end of pregnancy, many of them may revert to normal, okay? So we tend to forget about them, but it's a big risk for developing diabetes later on, and we shouldn't forget about these women. So we need to follow them up and make sure we take them through the lifestyle management and help them not develop diabetes.
That's a very interesting point you make, because I hear some of those women, I mean, hypertension, diabetes, it's a cocktail of many things that some of them get, which means that if the health system does not cater you know, for those issues after they have delivered, it could degenerate into some other problems.
Yes, so the watchword here is to continue to follow them up.
Right.
Because like I mentioned, many of them may revert to normal, but it doesn't mean that their risk is gone.
Are we doing that though? I mean, there is the postnatal care and all of that. Our health system, do we focus on that?
So for the initial 6 weeks, it's not a problem because the women are in clinic. Right. But subsequently, the follow-up becomes a problem. And we need women to understand that if they ever had a problem like that, they need to come regularly to have their blood sugars checked. Right. Again, for people with hypertension, the risk factors for both diabetes and hypertension are virtually the same. So having hypertension is also a risk factor for having diabetes, and such people need to regularly check their blood sugars to make sure that if it's developing, we work on it as quickly as possible.
So our guest this morning, Dr. Charlotte Ampong, she's an endocrinologist, and our focus this morning is on diabetes, as 2 days from now we're going to mark World Diabetes Day. The theme for this year's you know, celebration, if you can call it that, is the nurse in diabetes. How important are nurses in dealing with this scourge called diabetes?
So nurses are really crucial in the development, in the management of diabetes. All over the world, we have the nursing fraternity forms about 50% of the health workforce. So you can just imagine how important they are. Now, when it comes to the management of the patients in the clinic, the nurses are extremely important, as well as their education. The nurses help educate our patients on even how to take their medications, how to use their insulin. They talk about the lifestyle management with the patients. They talk about the diet. And then when patients are on admission as well, these nurses are also very important in helping us manage the patients. So right from diagnosis, the nurses play a very crucial role.
And talking about crucial roles, a lot of people who have diabetes also end up with some kidney situations of a sort, and then dialysis comes in and all of that. But we also know that in many countries, even in more advanced countries, the machines involved are not always so accessible. Here in Ghana, what is the situation? There are times when you encounter people, I mean, some of them are on social media trying to solicit funds and all of that because it's so expensive to be put on a dialysis machine. What are the dynamics with regard to that? And are there any moves in the health system, in the health sector, to ensure that people living with diabetes, the over 1 million or so people living with diabetes in Ghana, can have access to quality health care? So indeed, having to go on to dialysis is extremely expensive, and it is a heartbreaking diagnosis to have. Just how expensive is it? At least, before you even start your dialysis, just for the procedure, you may end up spending close to about $1,500, and then subsequently $1,500 just to get in your tubes and to prepare you for the dialysis. However, since a person on dialysis may need ideally 3 sessions a week, you wouldn't spend less than about 800 to 1,000 cedis every week. Wow. To be able to do, and that is aside your medications, and if you get any infections, any labs you have to do. So you can just see how expensive it is. Now, what I want to say is that largely it is preventable. Type 2 diabetes leading to kidney failure is preventable. So we do not want a situation where most of our patients are ending up on dialysis, because indeed out-of-pocket payments is not feasible unless maybe an insurance scheme comes in or a company comes in to help the person tide through. So what usually happens with people who are unable to pay, whose kidneys are basically on the verge of collapse? What happens to such people if, like you're saying, some insurance company or some entity doesn't step in on charitable grounds? What happens to them? Do they die? Is that it? So for most of these people, what happens is that because they cannot afford the dialysis, some people may even opt not to do the dialysis at all. And those who can manage to get a bit of money may do fewer sessions, and all these ends up in early mortality, early death for these patients. Wow. So the earlier you get to know, I mean, then like in the case of breast cancer in the West, it begs the question, how do we check ourselves to ensure that, is it the simple blood sugar test? What do we do to, find out early whether we have the signs of diabetes and to do the right things to avert getting on, dialysis? So I'd like to talk about the symptoms, so that if there are any people currently going through that, they'll see the need to hurry to the hospitals to get their blood sugars checked. So typically with diabetes, you may have excessive urination, and then you may feel thirsty all the time. For some people, I must add that for some people in the early stages, they may not have any symptoms. But if you are currently urinating a lot, you go to bed and get up about 3 or more times to urinate, and then you're always thirsty, you need to report to the hospital. Apart from that, people may have blurred vision. They feel like they're not seeing very well, although they do not have a refractive problem. And that is an indication for you to seek help from the hospital. Some people end up with frequent infections, maybe frequent boils. Like I said, frequent infections, maybe frequent urinary tract infections as well. And that is a sign that you should hurry to the hospital to make sure you do not have diabetes. And many people complain of numbness in their hands and in their feet. It may be a sign of diabetes. So if you're having those symptoms as well, it's important to report to the hospital. A few unfortunate people may come in when the disease is really advanced, so they may be coming in with the complications. And that's where we find them maybe even coming in a coma. And that's what we don't want to see, because when it happens like that, your risk of death is also higher. Again, another presentation we are currently seeing is some people for the first time will be coming in with a stroke or a heart attack. So that's how dangerous diabetes can be. So to make a diagnosis, usually what we do is a very simple test. Either we do your fasting blood sugar when you haven't eaten for a period of about 8 to 12 hours. So let's say it's an overnight fast. There's a simple test where your blood is taken, and then we check out for how much sugar you have in.
in there. So a value of about 7 and above would place you in the diabetic range.
Right.
Yes, and then there are other tests like the A1C. This A1C tells us what your blood sugar control has been over the past 3 months. So it's like an average sugar, okay? It's also a way of diagnosing people of diabetes as well.
Wow.
So if you have a range of about 6.5 or higher, that puts you in the diabetes range.
Now, we have to wrap up shortly, but I want us to address 2 critical issues. One of them has to do with training and support. People living with diabetes or other endocrine illnesses. What sort of training and support exists for them?
So that is why we have a society like DEMSOG. So DEMSOG, what we aim to do is to lead care in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. And generally, we provide advocacy for patients and we support them. We also do some research as well. But in most clinics in Ghana, what we have tried to do is to establish diabetes clinic. And this is important because when we are able to take patients living with diabetes away from the general population, we have more time for them. We're able to offer education. We're able to take them through what they need to learn, such that it's not just a normal clinic you walk in to see your doctor, but in that particular clinic, you have access to a diabetes nurse, you have access to a dietitian, you have access to doctors, have access to pharmacists as well. And all these people come together. They are specifically trained in the management of diabetes. And so it's easier to impact the knowledge to our patients.
This is a difficult question for you to give a yes or no answer to, but I would appreciate it if you could. Diabetes, the dialysis and the treatment, it's not captured when it comes to our national health insurance scheme. Do you think it's something that ought to be considered?
Definitely. It's one of the things I personally would advocate for. Currently, diabetes outpatient care and even inpatient care, parts of it is covered by the health insurance, but not everything. But something like...
Obviously not dialysis.
Obviously not dialysis. But I feel that going forward, it's important that the health insurance comes in to take care of the dialysis. Not just that, there's a concept called self-monitoring of blood glucose, which involves the patient checking their blood sugar to make sure they are well controlled. Because oftentimes what we are finding is that until patients come to the clinic, they never monitor their blood sugars. And so anytime they come into the clinic, the sugars are so high. It's this high sugar that's causing the damage to the kidneys and the other organs. Now, if we are able to help them by providing them with the glucose meters and providing them also with the strips, then they'll be encouraged to check these things and also to stay within range. And inherent and in the long term, we can even reduce the numbers getting to dialysis. So I strongly advocate that dialysis should be one of the things that we do for people living with diabetes.
Dr. Charlotte Ampong, it's been refreshing discoursing with you on diabetes, and hopefully we've given a lot of education to those out there who actually may have concerns, may be living with diabetes, and whose answers or whose questions you've given some answers to. Thank you so much for coming. That is Dr. Charlotte Ampong, an endocrinologist. Now, time to tell you a bit more about CORE. On a Healthy Thursday, we proceed with COVID-19, the Recovery and Resilience Program, also known as the CORE Program, which is an initiative of the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with Solidaridad and MasterCard Foundation. Now, CORE, that program was designed to provide support for young people in Ghana by mentoring and equipping them with relevant skills to enable them survive and thrive during and after the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. Daniel Dazi has been engaging Comfort Okran, who is team lead for the CORE project. Here's that interaction.
Months, something exciting has been happening in this country. I'm talking about a dream that started as a simple radio program and has turned into a movement that has touched almost 200,000 young people in all corners of the world. I'm referring to the COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Program, which was put together at the instance of the Springboard Roadshow Foundation with a lot of help from Solidaridad and MasterCard Foundation. Today, we've decided to step out of the studio and stop by the offices of those in charge of CORE and find out how we've been doing so far and the successes that have been chalked. I've been joined here by Comfort Okran. She's Executive Director for Springboard Roadshow Foundation, and also Stephanie Donu Sapon, who is the Head of Gender Equality Management at Solidaridad West Africa. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
So first of all, what at all is CORE for those who've been living under a rock for the past few months? Comfort.
The CORE program, which stands for the COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Program, is an initiative of the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with Solidaridad and the MasterCard Foundation. The CORE program seeks to provide young people aged between the ages of 18 to 35 job readiness skills, the opportunity to become more resilient in this uncertain era, as well as the opportunity to look at how they can acquire some job place skills even in this time and after COVID-19. You know, one of the things that this pandemic has brought to the fore is the need that young people must have the needed resilience to look at the uncertainty that the pandemic has brought into the world and say we can do more. We don't need to go under, and we don't need to go say that we are finished. But it's an opportunity for us to say, what can I do? How do I stand up to this? And how do I become a better me going forward after the program? So that is the CORE program, a program seeking to provide young people with skills, to provide them with resilience, to provide them with the opportunity to recover any losses they may have suffered during this pandemic and beyond.
Interesting. Now, Stephanie, I know that organizations worldwide have also faced their own challenges as a result of COVID-19. Why would Solidaridad, which is obviously like any other company bracing this storm, decide to support a program to help others thrive in this time?
Solidaridad is an organization that is very youth-focused. We believe that young people are indeed the next generation of this country and Africa as a whole. So we have a couple of programs that are aimed at empowering young people. And unfortunately, these young people have also been affected so badly by the COVID pandemic. So we felt the CORE program provides a unique platform to reach out to this demography and then try to give them certain skills that would help them to cope, one, to survive, and then also thrive during the COVID-19 pandemic beyond. So we felt it was a very good opportunity to reach out to the youth and then also help them to manage some of the shocks and stresses that the pandemic has presented to everybody.
So what are the platforms that you've leveraged in putting out the program?
So far, we are on 30 radio stations and 3 TV stations nationwide. In terms of community information centers too, we are doing about 19 at the moment. And then on social media, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, and we are also on YouTube. And then our counseling and e-mentorship sessions too are held on WhatsApp. And then we have a series of events also on Zoom. So these are some of the platforms that we make use of.
That takes me to my next question, because you mentioned e-mentoring, e-counseling. I know there's also e-learning. Let's start off with e-learning, Comfort. What is it really?
Well, when we were designing the program design, we looked at what means can we reach the young people that doesn't involve in-person work. You know, Springboard over the years, 30 years, we've done nationwide programs, and then we meet people face to face. And here we are, we have a problem, or we have, in this case, it became an opportunity where we are not able to do face-to-face or in-person meeting. How do we still pass on the needed skills that young people would have to acquire to be able to move and build resilience in this era and beyond? And therefore, we designed an e-platform whereby we said, okay, let's do these sessions in digital form and roll it out, as Stephanie has said, on various radio programs, radio stations, and so on and so forth. And therefore, we designed the e-learning platform, e-learning segment. This e-learning segment is simply 15-minute recordings of different topical areas, like how to identify your talent, how to monetize your talent, how do you use social media, if you are in a place of uncertainty, how do you face those obstacles, how do you turn obstacles into stepping stones, and issues like that. These are real things that some of the young people don't have the needed tools that they need to be able to address those questions that, or one would say even conundrums that they are facing. And therefore, we designed that the e-learning platform does provide them 15-minute recordings.
Okay.
These recordings are translated into at least 4 different Ghanaian languages. So we have the English version, you have Akan, you have Ga, you have Ever. The Dangbe's also have their translation, because we identified one group, the Yedie group, and they are in Dangbe, and they said, well, we do here, we don't really understand, and I do understand because I have a linguistics background, so I know Dangbe and Ga definitely are different languages, but because they are quite a lot, we decided to translate that for them. We also have the Hausa and Dagbani that we use for the counseling session only. But I'm sure you'll find out more about the counseling. So these are there, and we use different stakeholders, I mean, people who have been able to do it in society, like Reverend Okran, or the Ghana Psychological Association, the lead of the Ghana Psychological Association, or let's say we have somebody from the Ghana Society for the Blind, or and they come to give us the real how to do it, and the tools are really practical, because we want them to see it not as something that is out of the blue,
but something that can come home to them, can sit with them in their homes. It sounds fascinating. How about these e-counseling platforms?
Well, like the name suggests, it's counseling that is done electronically. So we have professionals delivering counseling support to the youth over WhatsApp platforms. Sometimes we have Zoom sessions. At the moment, we have about 42 professional counselors that have been assigned to the program. So this leg of the program basically looks at providing support to the youth so they are able to overcome the emotional stresses, the mental disabilities, the psychological stress that have come upon them as a result of the pandemic. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their homes. At a point it was recorded that for women there were cases of domestic violence because they were stuck in the same spaces with their abusers. So a lot of emotional stress. So this component of the program helps us to address that. And one novelty we had on the program is to give psychological first aid training to the program implementation team, so that we are like the first point of call. When somebody calls, you're able to kind of stabilize the person for some time before you refer them to a professional. So that's what we are doing on the e-counseling aspect.
Definitely a lot of skills that you need, and a lot that has gone on so far. And now there's e-learning, there's e-counseling. What about the mentoring part, Comfort?
I think I am really, really excited about the mentoring part, because what we have done is identified over 80 professional areas. So then you have the professionals in whether it's electricals, or the professionals in agribusiness, or professionals in animal husbandry, law, journalism, nursing. You have these professionals in these various areas, and what they have done is to provide counseling to provide mentoring for the young people who have been onboarded. Right now, we have over 7,000 young people onboarded in various WhatsApp groups. Therefore, on any given day, they have a regimented or a time, an hour in a week, But what happens is, because they are using the WhatsApp platform, if you come back during the week and you still have a question, you can still ask that question and to be answered during the week.
And how have those interactions been? How has it helped these young people?
We could show the viewers some of the snapshots. But here you are, this afternoon, I was just looking at the electricals page. Somebody has been asked to go and do, somebody had a problem, the meter or something, I'm not a professional there, but the meter or something had burnt or something like that. And he had been asked to go and look at it. And he sent a snapshot of the problem to the page and said, please, what is the issue here? So the counselors, the mentor there says that, okay, so you need to find out why it overheated, and these are the possible areas. So right there, the person is making use of the mentoring that he's receiving from the lead or from the mentor to help him do his job well. What I liked about that particular problem that the young gentleman was facing was that he said, you must make sure that you just don't reconnect it. Trace to find out exactly what made that electrical piece to heat up and melt, so that when you repair it, it doesn't get spoiled again. And I thought, this is very intuitive.
Yeah.
This is something that, you know,
it's definitely something he won't figure out on his own.
No.
And that's why you need the mentor. And Stephanie, I'm excited about the real-time element of this, because sometimes if it was face-to-face, you would have to book time with this person, wait for the person's convenience. You definitely won't get him when you're on your way to your job.
No, if you have a banker, if you have the heads of Ghana Judges Association as your mentor, I mean, there's no way you can walk into their office. No. So this program, the whole setup is so exciting. And you know, and to think that you are sitting in your room, we have the TV stations, as Stephanie mentioned, the radio stations, you have the WhatsApp, because when we finish with the recording, apart from the areas that we have, like the radio stations and so on and so forth, we send it on WhatsApp. We also post it on Facebook, and then it's also available on our webpage. So then there are multiple ways of interfacing with the program, and it can be at your convenience. It's there even when you go to bed, and it can be your whatever. So
whichever way that you want to use it, basically.
Whichever way you want to use it, it's available.
Interesting. Stephanie, you must be very excited to see this sort of feedback, but what really stands out for you when it comes to the success that this program has shocked?
For me, that would be the stories that we are already generating from our e-lead conferences. So the e-lead is a congregation of women where we line up women who are doing amazing in their areas of work. So we try to project them, they share their successes, they share their challenges, they try to inspire other women. And I guess it's because I work on gender and the empowerment of women, so I tend to align strongly towards that aspect, and I like the stories that we are hearing from the e-lead conferences.
I wish I could hear some of these stories. It sounds like there's so much going on.
And the interesting thing is, I think just yesterday we had an e-lead conference, and during that program we talked about the woman political. And you know, politics is one thing that divide people in this country. And yet the messages that we got from our viewers for that particular program, they were talking about the fact that today they have seen politics, you know, disaggregated from all the emotion. And they realized that we're talking about having a social impact on society, ensuring that the policies that are enacted in our country are able to reach the relevant people, and those policies that help people enjoy the things that are needed, make the nation grow. And therefore, they now see politics in a new light.
Okay.
So if we are talking about empowering ladies to go into politics, here is somebody saying that, oh, I always thought politics was, you know, really something that's to be touched. But it's possible to go in there, and because I have a focus, because I have a purpose, and because I am passionate about what I want to do, what I want to accomplish in society, I can go there and make a difference.
Right. So many thanks to you for doing the watching. The AM show continues after this. But thank you once again to Comfort Okran. She is the Executive Director for Springboard Roadshow Foundation. And Stephanie Donu-Sapong is the Head of Gender and Quality Management at Solidaridad, West Africa.